ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for that technical interruption here. Sometimes those things happen and you just don't know what to do unless you shut down the whole system and get it right. But I am glad we are back, and go ahead and let others who were already locked on to know we are back on live. And before we were disrupted, I was bringing you images from Ground Zero in Ambazonia, where Ambazonia Restoration Fighters in the Fako, Ndunga-Mantung and Boyo have left La République du Cameroon mesmerized as to what is going on in Ambazonia. Why the Pope was in the Cameroon and Ambazonia, they thought they got a message to send out to the international community that Ambazonia is no longer fighting, is incapable of fighting anymore. They are all left as Tatars around everywhere. But coming up on the Advent, on the heels of 20th May, coming up in a few days, 2 days actually, Ambazonia Restoration Fighters, Fako Unity Warriors, they came out and essentially exposed the frailty of the troops in La République du Cameroon and brought down, I do not know the figures they brought down, but at least they confiscated, they stripped the Cameroon army of at least eight, ladies and gentlemen, machine guns. And when I'm talking about machine guns, I'm not talking about AK-47s. I'm talking about automatic machine guns, including an RPG. And we find those displays in the image, in the video that I want to show you here. This is what Ambazonia Restoration Forces confiscated from the Cameroon army yesterday. Yesterday, I have made a count of the weapons you find there on the ground, and they turn out to be 8 of them. 8 automatic. As you can see, those machines, those are not AK. I can only see 2 AK-47s among them. The rest are what you call real machine guns. I don't know what their titles or their names are, but those are not AK-47. Those are industrial weapons, including an RPG lying there on your right. So that is the message that Ambazonia Fighters sent to La République du Cameroon yesterday from Fako, precisely in the Muyuka. Another incident of the sort took place in the Ndunga-Mantung. The same yesterday, 2 Cameroon soldiers were brought down by Ambazonia Fighters, and you can also see that image here coming from Ndunga-Mantung. You can see that image coming from Ndunga-Mantung. 2 Cameroon soldiers brought down in Ndunga-Mantung with their weapons displays on them and their carcasses lying there, as you can see. Again, all happening in the Ndunga-Mantung. May 1st. Again, the same restoration fighters in the Boyo got weapons, harvested weapons from Cameroon soldiers, as you can find their displays in the Boyo. So that is what is going on, ladies and gentlemen, in the Ambazonia. Cameroon would want the world to believe that, normalcy is returning in Ambazonia, and they desperately wish it is true. Unfortunately, everybody, especially those of us who have been following up events and those living in Ambazonia and Cameroon too, they know that there is nothing like normalcy returning to Ambazonia. On the eve of the so-called 20th May festivities, Ambazonia Restoration Fighters, they issued a message. Even in the video footage I have shown you, they issued a warning to everybody on the ground. They said, never again Never again will any Cameroon organize public holiday or national holiday be acknowledged in Ambazonia. They have passed that message, and they've also declared a 3-day lockdown in regard to the 20th May, and they are telling everybody to stay home. Stay home from participation from 20th May so-called. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it coming from Ground Zero. At this moment, I will take you to my talking point on this subject. But before I do that, let me go out in a minute. When I come back in the minute, I bring you my talking point. After the talking point, I bring in my guest. I will be joined by Barrister Harmony Bobga tonight and Eric Chinje. So please don't touch your remote. I'm coming right back with my monologue.
Don't be left behind.
AI is changing everything. Are you ready? Learn AI with live instructors, not pre-recorded videos. Become a certified AI engineer. Position yourself for high-paying global opportunities.
Get internationally accredited certification and real career support.
We help you build your resume and connect you to job opportunities. Classes start May 22. Limited seats available. Enroll now at certifiedaiacademy.com or text AI to 346-271-0711.
346-271-0711.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, the images that you'll find there on your right, that is a harvest of the Meme Fako Unity Warriors. The harvest took place yesterday in Muyuka, and at the last count, you have about 8 machine guns. 8 machine guns harvested from the Cameroon Scouts. Call them a Cameroon army, but we'll call them Scouts because an army cannot be stripped. A professionally trained army cannot be stripped by such a number of weapons in a blue. But that happened yesterday in Muyuka. Let me bring you my talking point on this subject. And again, after my talking point, I will be joined by Barrister Harmony Bobga and Eric Chinje, and we'll do justice to these issues. Fresh armed confrontations across the Southern Cameroons last weekend, that is yesterday, are once again challenging official Cameroon claims that the war in the Southern Cameroons-Ambazonia is fading into history. It is not. Reports of you've seen and videos circulating online following attacks on Sunday, May the 17th, suggest restoration fighters remain very active across several counties despite years of Cameroon military offensives and repeated claims from Yaoundé that stability is returning to the conflict-hit region or territory of Ambazonia. The latest attack took place in Muyuka, where Ambazonia restoration fighters, identifying themselves as the Fako Meme Unity Warriors, released video footage, as you find on your screen, claiming responsibility for an attack on Cameroonian soldiers. In the footage, the fighters displayed weapons seized during the operation, including several automatic machine guns and what appeared to be an RPG launcher. The video footage reviewed also showed long chains of ammunition, you can find them there, confiscated from Cameroon government forces. The restoration fighters did not clarify what happened to the Cameroonian soldiers involved in the confrontation. No official military statement has been released from Cameroon at the time of reporting, confirming casualties or losses. However, several Francophone bloggers and pro-government social media accounts, when I say pro-government, I mean Cameroon government, their accounts circulated images they claim showed soldiers killed during the Muyuka incident, though the authenticity and exact connection of the images to the attack could not be verified. The Muyuka confrontation was not isolated. On the same day, that is yesterday, another incident was reported in Ndunga-Mantung, where video footage circulating showed Ambazonia restoration fighters displaying what they said was a confiscated AK-47 rifle taken from a Cameroonian soldier whose fate remains unclear. The incidents appear to reinforce a pattern that has increasingly characterized the conflict in recent months. Hit and run attacks targeting military patrols or checkpoints, followed by the seizure of weapons and rapid withdrawal into rural terrain. Similar scenes were reported earlier this month in Boyo County, where Ambazonia-linked videos showed two Cameroonian soldiers lying dead beside rifles displayed on their bodies after another attack claimed by the fighters. Images from that incident quickly spread across pro-Ambazonia and pro-La République du Cameroon governments' networks, further fueling tensions and competing narratives surrounding the conflict. Taken together, the attacks are reviving difficult questions for the Cameroonian government at a politically delicate time. For months, officials and state-aligned commentators in La République du Cameroon have increasingly projected the image of a conflict nearing its end. Cameroon authorities have pointed to reopen schools, public events, road rehabilitation, and reduce visibility of armed groups in some urban areas as evidence that the government forces are regaining control. But the attacks in Muyuka, in Ndunga-Mantung and Boyo, they all reveal a more complicated reality. The Ambazonian insurgency may no longer dominate territory in the way it once threatened to during the early days of the conflict. But armed groups clearly retain operational capacity across multiple regions or counties in Ambazonia. The continued ability of fighters to ambush Cameroon security forces, seize weapons, and circulate footage online suggests that the war remains deeply entrenched beneath the surface calm that Cameroon is eager to project internationally. The timing of the attacks in Muyuka, in Ndunga-Mantung, and in Boyo is also symbolically significant. They come just days before Cameroon's so-called annual 20th May national rituals that Ambazonian groups banned years ago across the territory. For nearly 8 years, Ambazonian movements have declared both the February 11 Youth Day so-called and the 20th May National Day illegitimate in territories they consider independent Ambazonia. This year, Ambazonian groups again announced lockdown measures across all of Ambazonia ahead of the commemorations. The renewed attacks appear designed not only as military operations, but also as political messaging aimed at reinforcing Ambazonia's claims that Yaoundé still lacks uncontested authority in the territory. Analysts following the conflict say the broader significance of these incidents, of these attacks, lies less in the number of weapons reportedly seized and more in what they reveal about the unresolved nature of the war itself. After nearly a decade of fighting, neither side, neither Ambazonia nor La République du Cameroon has achieved decisive victory. Cameroon's government forces continue to maintain some control over major cities and administrative structures, while Ambazonia groups remain capable of launching disruptive attacks in rural and semi-urban areas. Civilians, meanwhile, remain trapped between military operations, fighters' enforcement measures, economic collapse, and prolonged insecurity. The conflict, rooted in long-standing grievances over political marginalization, and others call it annexation of the Southern Cameroons-Ambazonia, has killed thousands and displaced hundreds of thousands since violence escalated in 2016. International organizations and rights groups have repeatedly called for credible negotiations, warning that military solutions alone are unlikely to resolve the conflict. And that is perhaps the central message emerging from Muyuka yesterday, and of course Ndunga-Mantung and Boyo, and who knows who shows up next. The attacks underscore that despite official narratives of normalization, the conflict remains active, adaptive, and politically unresolved. The persistence of armed operations across multiple counties in Ambazonia suggests that the war cannot simply be declared over through government communication strategies and symbolic public events. Absolutely not. As Cameroon moves towards another May 20th celebration in 2 days under heavy security, the violence should serve as a reminder that beneath official declarations of stability, the deeper political questions driving the Ambazonia conflict remain unanswered. They remain unanswered. And that is my monologue, ladies and gentlemen. I will now bring in my guests for tonight. Again, I am being joined by Barrister Bobga Harmony and Eric Chinje. Barrister Harmony joining me from the state of Maryland, and Eric Chinje joining from Belgium. I can see Eric is on, but I don't see your video on. Okay, there you go. Great to have you. Barrister Harmony, great to have you back here, sir.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Regrettably, you spend more time on your monologue, and your guest are going to operate on injury time, probably less than 15 minutes.
Well, I get you. However, I have to lay the background for the subject of our discussion. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I know.
It's a pleasure having you back again, sir. Eric, can you hear me?
Unmute yourself, sir.
I think you are muted at your end, Eric. Okay, while Eric is adjusting his camera, let me come to you, Barrister Bobga. Yeah, so you see what is happening on the ground. La République du Cameroon would love the international community to know that stability is returning to the country, and they wish it does, because if stability returns, they have no need for any dialogue, any need for any negotiation. They desperately wish that stability return, that Ambazonia fighters lay down their arms and remain quiet. With what you see in the images that are coming from Muyuka, what can you make of that? Do you think that the people of Cameroon can preach stability to the end of the war?
Well, Chris, forever I'm concerned about the focus of discussions of the Ambazonian predicament, because my assessment is that 99% of the discussions focus on the symptoms, the fallout, and they don't address the substantive issue, which is where the problem lies. Because from your talking point, one would get that even from your own point, which is still all right, it is not very clear whether we are talking of an internal conflict or we are talking of a conflict that involves two independent states from a historical, juridical perspective. And this is something that we have been debating for a long time. And I'm very, very happy that I have our elder brother, Eric Chinje, who has also worked in the media in Cameroon. I mean, he's the name of CTV and then CRTV. So the records, we can call him one of the archives of this problem, because he has information, the good and the bad, that he has propagated on CRTV for fear of his neck. You remember when Biya said, "Hey, Mr. Eric, I can shake my head like this and you are no more." So this is the dire straits, the political Strait of Hormuz that our media men have lived for the 65 years that we have been in a forced relationship with La Republic of Cameroon. So I would have pleaded with you to give us a focus that takes us away from dealing with the symptoms or the fallouts of the conflict, so that we can educate our people. But before we get there, let me just say this. We sometimes talk about conflict between the Republic of Cameroon and Ambazonia, as we have come to settle to be. But I have something that I've been talking, very quietly to people about decoding the Ambazonian predicament. Because La Republic is not absolutely the issue. It is a convolution of foreign interest using the Republic of Cameroon as a mask to smash out of existence the erstwhile United Nations Trust Territory of British Southern Cameroon. Even getting to Southern Cameroon is problematic, because they took off as British Cameroons, and in their pleasure, the British ambassador in the United Nations, who was calling the shots at the time, they found it convenient to cut part of us and send to northern Nigeria. That became attached to northern Nigeria, and then we continued to be ruled from the colony of Lagos. And when our politicians started agitating, they moved to the Eastern House of Assembly, and the agitation continued until we moved to... Excuse me. You didn't lay the foundation, so I want to give the foundation so that we stay focused.
But let me explain to you the reason why I would like us to discuss what is happening on the ground. I presented my talking point based on what is going on the ground. Cameroon always wants to send the message that stability, normalcy is returning on the ground. But what we are seeing on the ground emerging from the weekend, quite contrary to that. So I think it is important we acknowledge that while Cameroon continues to say, well, the war is getting over. It is good to project these things and educate our people that no, they should not be fooled. Cameroon should not fool them, neither should they fool the international community. This thing, it is not over till it is over by virtue of what we see on the ground. That's why that talking point is important.
You don't tell passengers on a ship that they are sailing to destination when they are at the dry dock. That is the essence of my laying this foundation. But let me go along with you because you are in control of your invitation that you have extended to us. But I want to just make a quick statement. This is a dispute of identity and statehood between two independent states. I move from there. The manipulation, because let me tell you, the Francophones are not even sufficiently equipped, intellectually speaking, to decode this problem because they are all brainwashed about how they should see us. They are beginning to feel it now when the weight of the mischief of the agents of foreign interests on Ambazonia is beginning to visit them. So what I want you to know is that nothing about the narrative that is being dished out there that we are getting to normalcy and so on, even getting our younger brother, Archbishop Nkia in Bamenda to play some funny drama here, like a messenger for the Republic of Cameroon. You have to understand that the picture of who is involved is bigger. Even the statement that they say is coming from the presidency and stuff like that, it is processed by political psychologists in Champs-Élysées in order that it has the effect that it is intended for NATO members who are behind this mischief. Get it from me. I am constantly researching on this. This is not a conflict that has started now. And you would like to know, not tooting my horn, I reignited this revolution, but on a non-violent principle. When I organized the lawyers to have an inaugural conference, to the extent that I filed a petition before the Administrative Court of Cameroon, they call it Conseil d'Administration, the Administrative Council, which is kind of at par with the Supreme Court. And I asked them, show me an act of union. We are brothers, we are Africans. Show me the act of union. That petition is pending before that court and nobody wants to touch it. In fact, the late president of the Supreme Court said, un certain Monsieur Bobga nous a déposé un bomb because he was deputizing for the Constitutional Council. Let's get out of that. The killings on the ground, there is a market economy for that war in Ambazonia, where ministers of Anglophone extraction and their collaborators from the Francophone side are making money by overbilling the operations out there. And some of them even deposit arms to be picked by our people in the hope that our people will use them to kill themselves. This is the evil we need to decode before we proceed. And it is an instrument of dividing us. Our people, they call them warriors. I'm not calling them warriors. I call them self-defense militia of Ambazonia, which is a resurrection or a restoration of the mobile wing unit of the West Cameroon Police. I shouldn't take too much of this time. I respect my elder brother. I mean, even though I've started having my gray hair, his is more polished. I would like to allow you get him talk. I'm so grandfriend.
Minister Bobga, before I pass
is the lawyer talking?
Pass this over to Eric, are you suggesting that you do not support what the fighters on the ground are doing by defending their territory and defending and fighting for their freedoms? You don't support armed struggle?
That is an erroneous imputation, and it has been used not once, not twice. It has been used continuously against me.
Well,
But we are all entitled. Wait, no, I'm not correct. No, excuse me. Excuse me. Can you just wait? You ask the question. Can I answer your question?
Go on.
Let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. Thank you, Mama. There is a distinction. There is a distinction between somebody who is defending himself and somebody who is attacking. You get that?
Yes.
Ambazonia has never been on attack. We have never been in any war. Ambazonia has consistently been in self-defense of their identity and their statehood. And because our people suffer for lack of knowledge, you guys in the media need to educate them that even in the United Nations human rights documents, if you are attacked, you are entitled to defend yourself. You are talking to a Bali man. Nobody can come and attack me in my house and get away with it. I will fight back, but I will not go to somebody's house and attack you. This is what I'm talking about.
Okay. No, you make the point. I just hope others out there understand exactly what you mean. So essentially, you are not against self-defense, and as you've rightly put it, these fighters or warriors, as they call themselves in Ambazonia, they are defending themselves. Let me get over to Eric. Eric, sir, Cameroon has looked for every opportunity to want the world to believe that no mercy is returning. And tell me what you think is going on in their minds when they see images like the ones I've presented here emerging from Ambazonia. Eric?
Yes, Chris. I hope you can hear me, and I'll do the best I can to answer the question, which I'm not sure I'm totally qualified to answer. But let me first of all...
Let me put the question across again. You are so much aware that Cameroon wants the world desperately to believe that normalcy is returning and stability is returning. So my question is, what do you think goes on in their minds when they see images, as I've presented here, emerging from Ambazonia, where we are harvesting weapons from their fighters, from their trained army?
Yes. Well, okay. Maybe let me take it from a different perspective here. First of all, to answer your question directly, there's no normalcy returning to Cameroon. There's no normalcy returning to Cameroon for a whole range of reasons. And one, of course, is the ongoing, allow me to call it the Anglophone crisis. It's ongoing, it's real. And as, Lawyer Bobga said, there's a war economy that we must also recognize. So it is not just about a people that want to free itself from an oppressive regime. It's also about folks within that regime more than eager to engage in very negative outcomes for the simple reason that there's an economic benefit to those who are responsible for running the country, and this is the tragedy of war. And I think those of us who care about the lives of people and the nation, we ought to recognize that in a war economy, it's not only about people dying, lives being lost, but it's about an exaggeration of greed by people who have access to the resources of the land. And that's what we're living through in Cameroon at this time. As I said, and, Lawyer Bob said it very, in as plain language as possible. It's important to decode the crisis. And it's only in doing that that we'll understand what roles various sectors of people in various sectors of life are playing to maintain this crisis being maintained. So we cannot talk about going back to normalcy when the rug is when various elements within the society, a very greedy society, are intent on ensuring that the crisis continues because they've got something to get out of it. For me, that's the tragedy of this whole thing, the tragedy of the crisis. It's not about freedom. It's not about it's not about our inability to live together. It's not about our inability to allow people to live quality lives. It's everything about the greed, about the emotional commitments to things that really ought to be relegated to the background. That's not being done. So, the conflict will go on for a long time. Normalcy will not return. And I don't know, we just have to hope for the best, and that our people can someday find a way to live together and to live with, improved lives. That's not happening right now.
Barrister Bobga, you went back to the foundation of this conflict, talking about what we consider to be annexation, not just marginalization. And in 2 days, Cameroon will be celebrating what they call the National Day of Unity, and Ambazonia has proscribed that so-called National Day of Unity. Can you explain to Ambazonians, Southern Cameroonians, why they cannot be celebrating this particular day or event?
So, coming back to that point, I'll start by giving you some facts of interaction with some politicians from La République du Cameroon. The first I would like to mention to you is our late brother Nijon Frundi. I can tell you, I was his very first personal assistant and legal advisor, even before the creation of the SDF. I advised him during the campaigns of his khaki list, which was his political debut. And his firm objective was the independent statehood of Southern Cameroon. But they had advised that we cannot move without registering a party. So his hand was forced. All the people who were discussing about the party, I won't mention any name, when it came to registering the party after they had prepared the manifesto and the constitution, they chickened out. It is his Nijon Frundi's uncle, Professor Siga Asanga, who said, we are in the middle of the waters of creating this historical party to move ahead. First of all, Professor Asanga was Pan-Africanist. His nephew, Nijon Frundi, was Southern Cameroonian. And he told him, John, sign. I will sign as the Secretary General because I can handle the state work. You have charisma. You go ahead as leader. That was the decision of Professor Siga Asanga. I'm talking as a witness inside, but outside the meetings that used to be held by those who were promoting it, university dons, judges, lawyers, and so on, because I was a secret advisor. Now, when they came with the 1990 laws, the foreign interest advised Biya's government, you have to accommodate this guy one way or the other. When they called me, John, that we have to re-register the party, me, John said they need a born person 2 times in Pidgin. When they prevailed on him, he said, I'm not going there without Bobga, because going there without me was a betrayal. And then I weighed everything. I said, a platform is not an agreement of a union. And we moved to the fort upstation. I didn't have to sign anything, just my presence. And they signed it. They registered the party all over, under Biya's law and not Ahijo's law, the 1962 law. From there, me, John, still started campaigning. Then the chicken-hearted politicians from the West. And when I say chicken-hearted, it is not derogatory, because after Congo-Kinshasa, the next, or even possibly the major genocide in sub-Saharan Africa was the genocide against the Bamilekis, and their fear is legitimate. So the Bamilekis now flooded the SDF, and they brought the funds that were needed. That is when I resigned from the SDF, because money started talking. The rest of it is public knowledge. But let me take you back. From the British Cameroons to the British Southern Cameroons to West Cameroon, there has never been an act of union. The British, who are the greatest culprits as far as the mischief on Southern Cameroonians are concerned, by the UN instructions, they were supposed to accompany us, because we needed their professional, legal, and political support in the negotiations that were supposed to take place in Fumba. They abandoned us. One of the British people who was so concerned about how you can throw a child out to go and fend for himself without support accompanied us to Fumba. And Foncha told him, we are independent, you get out of here. They drove him away from the conference. Thanks to Pambile and his group, they insisted, when they had played all the champagne and sweet baby game, they insisted that this thing has not arrived at a conclusion yet. And Ahijo promised them that the discussions will continue. That discussion has never continued, other than bribing people to accept positions in effect of Federal Republic of Cameroon. Tell me, in 1972, the plebiscite, how does it relate to Southern Cameroon? The Southern Cameroonians had a plebiscite exclusively for themselves, that they would join the Republic of Cameroon instead of Nigeria, subject to conditionalities that were going to be hammered out in a conference, that is the Fumban conference. That has never been concluded. Thereafter, Ahijo, with his heavy hand, continued to rule by decree. And 20th May is very distant from any democratic culture, just as much as the referendum of 1972 that allowed the 80% Francophones in the proposed Federal Republic of Cameroon to vote and overrun the votes of the 20% of Southern Cameroonians and say that, oh, we are now a Federal Republic. All this nonsense has been put to test that nobody wants to address in La République du Cameroon. What we need to do, and Chris, I praise you for what you are doing with your media. We need to have education sessions. We need to ask people to contribute money so that you have simple education systems, programs to teach our people. Because some people complain that, oh, your grammar too high. When I talk in pidgin, they say we need to understand this and that. But get this from me. Go and read, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. How did Mao Zedong change China and put it on the orbit to become a world power today and threatening to become the #1 world power? I tell you this, I was in Council School, Victoria in 1967-68. Land Rovers were shipped, all broken down Land Rovers were shipped from PW Yard and sent as gift by Ahijo, as gift to China. We were more powerful economically than China, but look at it. Ask yourself why. If you give those Amba boys the Republic of Cameroon, even with their generals, they will make them march naked on the street because they are fighting with a spirit of rightness. They are not fighting with dirty hands. They are defending themselves. God is on our side. And another thing you need to know, I've never seen on Brother Eric's lapel of his coat the rose that is constructed with cloth, the insignia of the occultist Rosicrucians, and the Freemasons have their own. How he managed to swim through the rivers of the crocodiles and come out, he has to ask his grandfather.
He was wiser.
But I tell you, Cameroon is not only suffering from physical war, it is spiritually entrapped. There are vultures, there are vampires sucking the blood, but the blood of Ambazonia resides in their bones. Their beaks will not get in there and take an ounce of blood. They can fight forever. East Timor took how many years to become liberated? But I assure you, I'm 68, but I will see an independent Southern Cameroon. So this is to tell you that don't call them warriors, don't call them soldiers, don't call them some funny name Amba boys. Call them the self-defense militia of entrapped Ambazonia.
So
because when you decode it, that is who they are.
We get that point.
That is who they are.
We get that point. And
yes.
We get that point. You are absolutely correct. My question was, how do you pitch to a Southern Cameroonian on the street out there that 20th May should not be celebrated?
I don't even need to explain to them. I've already said it. Southern Cameroon is not part of the Republic of Cameroon. 20th May is the mischievous creation of Republic of Cameroon and their partners lodged in foreign interest. So there should be absolute country Sunday. People in Mamse know that when Obasanjo is going out to dance, nobody gets out of his house. People in Bali know that when Voma is going out to bless the land, nobody gets out of his house. That is the code. Everybody should be in his house. There should be a 48-hour night where people are just sleeping in their house. No 20th May. No 20th May. Let them come and celebrate as they have been coming. They ship people from Bafoussam to come and march in Bamenda, and they pass the pictures and say that it's Bamenda people. Let me talk like Zebediah. Far, 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 far. Because my people understand this language. The falsehood will become acidic and it will blind the Francophones who are allowing themselves to be used. You think I'm comfortable with the death of the government soldiers? The government soldiers of La République du Cameroon include Ambazonians who, out of desperation, who cannot have any job, are forced to go into the army and are not even being paid. Some of them die, they don't even collect their corpses, they put sand and take to their parents and say they don't open the casket of military people and bury sand. The parents in La République du Cameroon should understand that if we go by the dishonest theory of people like Kamtu, that the whole idea is a restoration of German Cameroon. I ask the question, where is Southern France? I mean, Southern Chad? Where is Congo Brazzaville? Where is Central African Republic and Gabon? Those are all parts of German protectorate that was emerging. It had not even crystallized. If they wanted to restore it, all these people in the West should restore in full measure. Yeah, I'm outside, I'm not there. They should restore Southern, they should restore German Cameroon and hand it to Germany. But we have gone past that.
Yeah, let me turn to Eric. I would like Eric to try this. How do you look at 20th May celebrations in the Southern Cameroons today, considering what it was meant to be in 1972? If you were still in Cameroon, living in Cameroon, under the same situation we find ourselves today, would you be encouraging people to go out there and celebrate 20th May?
I have a very simple answer to that. I mean, I'll never have people go out to celebrate May 20th. And if I had the voice and the ability to do it, I'll call for a total boycott of that event. Why? Because I think it's a historical misnomer. It's a slap on the face of anybody, everybody who's desired to see a people live within the same geography in peace with the right within the right constitutional framework in which the rights are respected, there is justice, there is political acceptance of fundamental rights and privileges and responsibilities, and there is a social contract that allows everybody within that geographical space to see equity, fairness, participation, responsibility, and the ability to live together. Until we can get to that point where everybody in that area sees, or the vast majority of people in that area have a reason for one to live in it, until we can get to that. And events like May 20th will continue to remain meaningless. I really hope, and I say this with no intent of calling on anybody to be, to be disruptive, to be violent, to be antisocial, to stand against the tide of history. No. I think it is for every single, the 30 million people, maybe more, who live in that space, it is their right to demand and be accorded the ability to live a full life, to benefit from the God-given resources of that land, and to be able to contribute as meaningfully as possible to the exploitation of the resources, to the development of the land, and to social cohesion that allows people not only live together, but to build together. We are not there by any stretch of the imagination for a whole range of reasons. One, and most fundamental to this, is the absence of a constitution that recognizes who we all are, what each one has a right to demand and to claim, and where the folks in Kambe, in Bafoussam, in Tikari, or any of people across the land, where they want to go, whether they want to be together, and how they want to be together. Until these fundamental questions are asked, and they can only be asked and answered through a meaningful constitution that was not developed in response to foreign interests or group demands. You all know, for example, that the reunification which is being celebrated on May 20th, which should be considered a major scandal. The reason for that, for May 20th, is because in the early 60s, after 61, the French government, ELF, the French oil company, announced a major find of oil in the Gulf of Biafra, or the Gulf of Guinea, if you want to call it that. They announced a major find, and he instantly told Ahidjo what he needed to do with regard to that find. And Ahidjo made it clear to them, based on agreement signed in post-Fumban, that oil will be controlled, the resources will be controlled by West Cameroon, by John Gufoncha and Augustin Gomjoa and Bile and Ndeli and the rest of them. Ahidjo told them that. And the French government instantly said, well, in that case, this oil is not going to come on, it's not going to come out of the ground until the early 70s. So by 1970, it was important to make sure that the system that Fumban should have provided, that system is deconstructed, it's dismantled. And in its place, we ultimately have what came to be the United Republic of Cameroon, which is being celebrated on May 20th. So there's a whole lot of reason why we should not only reject it, but reject May 20th forcefully. I don't know whether that answers your question, Chris.
No, that does. However, somebody listening to you, knowing the role that you played in the regime as the editor-in-chief of CRTV would be asking, what were you told within that organization to project 20th May to be as Southern Cameroonians? I mean, to Southern Cameroonians.
One of the problems. Yes, one of the problems. Look, first of all, one of the problems I have with a lot of our people is this inability to bring perspective to how they relate to ongoing, especially historical events. Someone were to ask me, what did you do as editor-in-chief in Cameroon Television? I left that place. I was at the height of my professional life at the time, and I could have stayed there. But I left for reasons that I could expound here. But I did leave, so that's proof that I found something wrong with the system. But let me not
Did you retire or you left because we disagreed
I
with the
left Cameroon
system.
I left Cameroon in 1991 at the height of when I was close to the president. I was recognized as a good professional. At the height of my professional career, I left Cameroon. This is fact, and this is history. One of the problems we have, Chris, is this it's this ready willingness to not deal in truth and fact. That's what's destroying who we are and where we are.
But
let's live with the facts.
You know that it's a fact that CRTV journalists are told what to say they told a certain editorial line when it comes to 11 February, 20th May. They cannot put out any narrative that is not supported by the regime. In fact, they will tell those who oppose 20th May they are unpatriotic. You know that narrative, right?
That's what you guys say now. The truth was totally somewhere else 40 years ago. And it's easy even now to make the kind of claim you're making. A lot has changed. Things evolve. History changes. The forces that drive society also evolve. I want to, the folks who will say, oh my goodness, I'll tell you, back in the mid-70s, for example, we used to come into the newsroom. I would come into the newsroom as a journalist and find out that there are things I could not say because there were very harsh rules, censorship at the time. But a lot, things changed. A lot changed.
When you say things change, what do you mean? What do you mean by things change? Are you saying those rules in the newsroom no longer happen or what?
Absolutely, it kept evolving. It kept evolving, my brother. It kept evolving. There were things we used to come into the newsroom. Look, we can't go back into history now and try to rewrite it. But let me say this. There was a time when I joined Radio Cameroon in 1975. I was in a young university student, fresh out of high school, in university, but at the same time, I started working in Cameroon television, Cameroon radio, and would come into the newsroom and the news coming from around the world. I remember just one example. There was a strike by the University of Lagos students, major strike by University of Lagos students. And the first thing that was written, there was a board as you entered the newsroom, which listed the things we could not talk about. So about censorship.
I thought you being the editor would decide what you cannot talk about, not somebody coming from above you to tell you what you can't talk about.
Well, you have to be listening to me because this was in 1975. I was a young, obviously had zero authority over anything. And I never did this when I was editor-in-chief. Absolutely not. But the reason I mentioned this was because we found a way as journalists in one of the most radically oppressive systems with Ahijo and at the time fighting what was supposed to be the Maquisards in Cameroon and so on. Even under such hard oppressive measures, we found a way around the president to say the things we said. And they said, oh, well, it's the Anglophones. They can get away with it. But we would say, I remember starting a newscast by saying, President Ahijo said this because the president always said all the right things. President Ahijo said this. And then I'll say the things I wanted to say. And anybody who was unhappy with me, I'll say, well, you must be telling us you're unhappy with President Ahijo. And everybody was afraid. So nobody dared say they were unhappy with President Ahijo. So, there were always ways around them. We did this when CRTV started. I could write a whole book on that. So no, it's not about them and us and the rules. It's about each of us and where we find ourselves in the context of history and what we think our responsibilities are. I can defend my responsibilities today, tomorrow, the day, and yesterday. So that it comes down to each of us. And everybody who's criticizing out there right now. I know I come on your show, Chris, in spite of all the criticisms I constantly get. You know why? Because I am confident in what I'm saying. I can take responsibility for what I'm saying. And that responsibility for me is, how do I make the place I live in, the people I live with, how do I make life better for each one of them? For me, at the end of the day, that's what drives me, because at the end of the day, I think about one thing. What will you say to God when he asks you at the end of times? What did you do with all I gave you? That's what I try to answer to every day.
Well, I think you have evolved a lot, considering the times when you were editor there, and considering what other journalists, your peers at the time, were able to do in spite of the rigidity, the editorial rigidity that existed then. I'm talking of people like Pierre Ngome, Charlie Ndichia, Asung Nkemleke.
I was in charge of that team. But let me tell you, what
was your influence over Cameroon Calling? Because, it was good. It was the best on CRTV.
Well, let me tell you, sir. Let me tell you that Cameroon Calling, I was one of the early people on Cameroon Calling. I was one of the early presenters of Cameroon Calling. I created the program called Minute by Minute, which Akonka Jordan before raised to took and raised to a whole new level. But that program was very critical of a lot of things. Cameroon Calling was very critical of a lot of things.
Yeah.
Before all the younger people came into that program, I was on it. The proof is there. So
when Charlie Ndichia goes on the CRTV and says lies from CRTV, what would you as editor be thinking?
Charlie Ndichia is one of the some of the best journalists that country's had happened to have been with me at the time. Yeah. Some of the best journalists. So I will not, each of us had our weak points, but we were all as a team. If you look at what we did as a team, it was formidable, which is why when I left Cameroon and I went to the World Bank as head of communications for Africa, I looked at Cameroon to bring in the people I needed on my team at the World Bank. And many did come. And we went from a country that was not present within the communications world of the World Bank and the IMF. We went from a team where there was 0 Cameroonian to the 3rd in the world, after the United States, Britain. The 3rd in terms of numbers, the 3rd was Cameroon. So, people can say what they want. Everybody has a right. But I say each of us should be thinking, what will be my answer to God when he says, what did you do with all I gave you? I have my answers and I'm at peace with myself. I hope most of the people, critical and criticizing, can say that too.
Eric, stay put in there. When we come back, we will discuss your meeting of Saturday and Biya's inability to form a cabinet. Almost eight months, and Biya still hasn't been able to form a cabinet. Stay put, we'll be right back.
Thank you.
All right.
Don't be left behind.
AI is changing everything. Are you ready? Learn AI with live instructors, not pre-recorded videos. Become a certified AI engineer. Position yourself for high-paying global opportunities.
Get internationally accredited certification and real career support.
We help you build your resume and connect you to job opportunities. Classes start May 22. Limited seats available. Enroll now at certifiedaiacademy.com or text AI to 346-271-0711.
346-271-0711.
Don't be left behind.
AI is changing everything. Are you ready? Learn AI with live instructors, not pre-recorded videos. Become a certified AI engineer. Position yourself for high-paying global opportunities.
Get internationally accredited certification and real career support.
We help you build your resume and connect you to job opportunities. Classes start May 22. Limited seats available. Enroll now at certifiedaiacademy.com or text AI to 346-271-0711.
346-271-0711.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is almost 8 months since elections in Cameroon in October. And December the 25th, Paul Biya in the New Year address to the nation promised to quickly put together a cabinet that addresses the nation's problems. Almost 8 months, nothing. 8 months after Cameroon's deeply disputed October 25 presidential election. The country remains trapped in one of the most unusual political silences in its history. Paul Biya, now 93 years old, and still officially the world's oldest sitting head of state, has yet to form the government he personally promised Cameroonians on New Year's Eve last year. And that silence is no longer being interpreted as ordinary political delay. It is now increasingly being viewed as evidence of something much deeper, a regime quietly struggling with the realities of succession, internal power rivalries, and the uncertain future of a political system built almost entirely around one man for more than 4 decades. On December 31st, 2025, in what many observers describe as an unusually direct commitment, Paul Biya told Cameroonians that improving living conditions would become the priority of the government that will be formed in the coming days. The phrase sounded simple at the time, but those coming days have now turned into nearly 8 months, and Cameroon still has no new government. That is extraordinary, isn't it? Even by Cameroon standards. This is a country where political decisions have historically been tightly controlled from the presidency, where cabinet reshuffles often come without warning, and where ministers themselves frequently learn of their appointments or dismissals through state television. Yet today, the entire political establishment appears suspended in uncertainty. Ministries operate in caretaker mode. Policy momentum has slowed. Rumors dominate political conversation in Cameroon today. And the longer the silence continues, the louder the central question becomes. What exactly is delaying the formation of Mr. Biya's government? The answer is increasingly appears tied not simply to governance, but to succession. Earlier this year, Cameroon's parliament, you will recall, approved one of the most politically significant constitutional changes in decades: the reintroduction of the office of vice president, a position abolished in 1972. Under the revised framework, the vice president would automatically assume power and complete the presidential term if the sitting president dies or resigns or becomes incapacitated. That amendment changed everything, and I mean everything politically, because for the first time in years, the Cameroonian state appears to be openly preparing for the possibility of political transition in the Biya era. And that explains why many analysts believe the cabinet delay is not accidental at all. It is strategic. The ruling system is likely trying to stabilize itself before unveiling a new political structure that could determine who controls Cameroon after Paul Biya. Within the regime itself, succession tensions are believed to be intensifying. Power blocks, regional loyalties, business interests, military networks, and influential figures around the presidency are all believed to be maneuvering carefully around the uncertainty of what comes next. At 93 years old, Paul Biya is no longer merely governing a country. He is governing a succession crisis. And that reality hangs over every delayed decision in that country. The official explanation for the delay has never been fully articulated, but the context speaks loudly. Biya's rare public appearances, long-standing reports about his health, and the highly centralized nature of Cameroon's presidency mean major decisions often require direct presidential approval. That raises another uncomfortable possibility, that governance itself may increasingly be operating through layers of advisors, insiders, and competing influence networks rather than through a fully functional presidential system. And ordinary citizens are beginning to feel the effect. The country remains burdened by economic hardship, insecurity in multiple regions, and unresolved political conflict. In the Southern Cameroons-Ambazonia, the armed conflict continues with no political breakthrough in sight. In the north, insecurity remains persistent. Meanwhile, frustrations over alleged electoral fraud from the October 25 election have never fully disappeared. The contention remains. Yet, the state itself appears frozen in prolonged transition. What makes this moment especially dangerous is not merely the delay itself, but what it symbolizes. Cameroon increasingly looks like a country preparing for the end of an era without openly admitting it. And history shows that systems built heavily around one dominant political figure often struggle most during moments when succession becomes unavoidable but remains politically sensitive to discuss openly. That is now Cameroon's dilemma. The cabinet delay is no longer just administrative. It has become psychological, symbolic, and political. It reflects a state cautiously attempting to manage uncertainty while pretending normalcy still exists. But the longer the silence lasts, the harder that becomes. Whether acknowledged publicly or not, Cameroon is already entering the politics of the post-Paul Biya's era. And that is that talking point there. Eric, let me get back to you. Sir, you have been holding meetings, lots of different groups holding meetings. There is also this group called, is it the CC something? I've forgotten the...
The Cameroon Sovereignty Council with,
Yeah, with
CSC.
Ben Aki and the rest.
With Ben Aki.
And there is also your project, Cameroon. And I think over the weekends, Aki's meeting held a meeting, and they are talking about the restoration of the mandate of Issa Chiroma and his return to Cameroon. And I wasn't able to join you in your meeting. I don't know what you guys discussed, but there is something that is on the balance. A cabinet. How does one explain that Biya wins an election? Since October 2025, it's almost 8 months. He promised a new cabinet, a new government on New Year's Eve, and up to today, there is no sign of a new cabinet coming on. Now, local elections have been postponed. Legislative elections have also been postponed. There is absolutely nothing that anybody sees, no movement anywhere, except the talk of a vice president and a succession. So, what are you hearing, Eric? What is stopping Biya from forming this cabinet?
Well, wow, Chris, the answer to that, a good answer to that would tell the modern history of Cameroon. So I can only give a partial answer to it. The fact is, we are in a crisis of succession. But more importantly, we're in a major constitutional crisis. We are facing the dilemma of coexistence and truth. You cannot build the foundations of a nation on the shifting sands of lies, of untruth. We're in a phase in the development of Cameroon where we will get it right or will fail to exist as a nation. This is the time. Because all that can go wrong has gone wrong. And as I say, we cannot build a nation on lies. Everything that has constituted the untruths of the past are coming to haunt us now. And until we can respond to them meaningfully, this country will fail to exist. It will go under. And I say this now with total conviction because, Chris, and I'll disclose this here, yesterday I sent a letter to Mr. Biya. Yesterday. And at some point in May, I may make it public, but it was sent yesterday, pleading with this man, pleading with those who control him. I said, please, if we know, let the president see this letter, and if he doesn't, since you control it, do let us know. And that letter was brutally frank about the state of the nation as it is now. We're either going to have to stand up and save it by letting everybody feel a part of it, or we're just going to have to admit that it is beyond us and succumb to, I don't know what it is that will replace it. Do we go back to villages as we knew them before even the Germans came? I don't know. Do we, many think it should be a federation of sovereign states. Maybe that's one way to go. But it will never be the same again until it is resolved. Mr. Biya is caught in, from his perspective, it's a crisis of succession. But maybe the man is not even in control anymore. He may not be in control anymore. He does not control the economy and how an economy should be run. He does not control the politics and how what the political dispensation should be. So, and if there's no leadership, then there's no vision for the country. If there's no vision, then we are more like a ship caught in high seas with zero control and totally no sense of where it is going. So we're turning around and around and around. And, as Chino Achebe will tell you, when you turn around and around in the widening gyre, things will fall apart. That's what we're beginning to see in that country. You're asking, the least of it is appointing a government, but they cannot even agree on that. And because there's no central power in control, everybody has a bit of the power that has devolved over the years to individuals who have no sense of national unity and a vision. We cannot bring the parts together. And, this is not something to celebrate. It's a tragedy. And it could get worse. And I personally hope not, but it could.
So what is in this letter that you forwarded to Paul Biya? What are you asking him to do?
It's an attempt to understand the situation, one. Two, I'm totally conscious of the fact that the president may no longer be in control. So it's a letter also to those who will see it, who control him. And so if he sees it, and I'm hoping he will, if he sees it, I'm trying to expose the true nature of things as they are in Cameroon from my perspective. And I can only do that. If he doesn't see it, those who see it will know that someone who's totally neutral, this is his reading of the situation. So one way or the other, I hope it will lead to what we need the most. National reconciliation, a new constitution, a judicial system that works, an economic system that ensures equity, distribution of the Commonwealth, and so on.
Do you think they are by any means ignorant of what your stance are on the current issues, considering that they know you have been very much strongly behind Issa Chiroma? So
again,
in that case,
that is
what you write.
That is a perception. I do not support individuals. I was never a member of the CPDM when I was in Cameroon. So I never really was a Biya person. I'm not a Chiroma person. I'm a Cameroon person. I've been fighting to obtain what makes the most sense for that country. And I've done it coldly, with no emotional commitment to one person or one political orientation or the other, one ideology or the other. No. I've tried, based on what I know, what I'm exposed to determine what is in the best interest of that piece of geography. And I've done what I can over time. And I can list it all when the time comes. Done everything I can to try to contribute to making life better for the people of that homeland.
This talks about Issa Chiroma returning to Cameroon. We have heard it before. Is there any truth to what we are hearing now?
I hope that Mr. Chiroma goes back to Cameroon in good time before this whole thing crumbles. As I say, I have supported and continue to support as best I can Mr. Chiroma because he won the elections and we all know that. And because he represents change in Cameroon. We know that. Cameroonians voted Chiroma because they want change. As long as that is truth, nothing else as far as I'm concerned really matters. So I will continue to support him as best I can. Unfortunately, my ideas do not necessarily carry with the team around him. So I'm doing what I can to support change in Cameroon. Will Mr. Chiroma be going back home soon? I hope so. There are some initiatives that are at work right now as I speak. There's some important initiatives. I hope one of them will succeed in time for him to get back to that country within a reasonable amount of time before everything collapses. So my answer to your question is he returning to Cameroon soon? I do not know for sure, but I do know one thing, that there are some important critical initiatives that are being worked on, and that may ultimately result in his going back home and Cameroon finding a way to return things to normalcy, which we've been talking about in the country.
Do you still have any faith in him returning to Cameroon and taking back the mandate or becoming president? Because I think that is gone for good.
Yeah, I want to continue. Look, I'm not going to engage in some random wishful thinking with regard to the nation, with regard to the challenges that the country faces. I don't know that Mr. Chiroma has, what it takes to go back to Cameroon. I happen to have been with him in Nigeria, where his life was threatened, where a gun was put to his head. I happen to have been in Yola with Mr. Chiroma. And then in Abuja, I got a message from the leadership of Nigeria asking if we could arrange for some form of intermediation to take place. I look back now and I wish I had pushed that agenda as strongly as I could. I didn't.
They were asking for mediation to take place between. Nigeria was going to mediate between Chiroma and Cameroon, or what was the mediation about?
The people were coming out with different kinds of ideas and ways to resolve what was obviously a crisis in Cameroon. Somebody had won the election, Mr. Issa Chiroma, and there was a group of people who were in power who decided he will not take that seat. He will not go into a Tudi. So there were obviously two opposing but very powerful forces. One was truth, which was on the side of Chiroma. The other was on political expediency, over which the others had more control. So everybody could see from back then that Cameroon, we had this immovable rock and unstoppable force coming at each other. It was evident. So all kinds of proposals were being made, amongst which were, and I said this on your program, and it was, I said this on your program back in November, and it was misinterpreted, and that contributed to part of the problems we ultimately had. But I will say it again. There were efforts to address the problem through maybe mediation, because it was either that or outright war. Nobody was prepared for violence. Am I saying Nigeria tried to mediate? No, I'm not saying that.
Okay. What was the suggestion when you said Nigeria suggested mediation?
No, I was saying we were in Nigeria when many ideas were coming forth to resolve the crisis. Mr. Chiroma happened to be in Nigeria. I happened to be with him in Nigeria at the time, and there were lots of ideas coming forth.
So you're not saying Nigeria suggested to mediate between Chiroma and Cameroon?
No, the ideas were coming from people everywhere during that time.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you think that Chiroma, as of this moment, looking back, regrets leaving the country and going on exile just on his own?
I can tell you for sure that he does not regret it, because there was a real determination to kill him. There was a genuine attempt, not a determination, a genuine attempt to kill him. Used bullets were found in his house, and the trajectory of those bullets, where they came from, was from the neighbor's house. So there was a genuine attempt to kill him. In Nigeria, this government paid people to arrest him, and he was arrested, and a gun was put to his head. That too is fact. It is true.
That was in Nigeria.
That was in Yola, Nigeria.
Yeah.
And then they found out that this was not some massive criminal that, as described by the Cameroon authorities, because they had said, that urged the Nigerians to arrest this horrendous criminal who had made his way into their territory. So they discovered it wasn't, and he was provided presidential protection. And it was during that time that negotiations across West Africa resulted in his being provided temporary residency in Gambia, where he is as we speak. So yes, Mr. Chiroma is genuinely afraid for his life, because there's been an attempt on that life not once, twice, and I think he doesn't want to give his potential killers a third possibility. So, having said that, I still think that, one, there's a determination on his part, a true, real determination on his part. I'm not very much in contact with him anymore, but there's a real determination on his part to go to Cameroon. And based on everything going on right now, there's a chance he might sooner than later. So that's happening. There's a second thing I want to make clear, and I told Mr. Chiroma this. The reason I stand with him is because he won the elections, and winning the elections were about change. So as the winner of those elections, if he were to be in Cameroon, that change will come. And we want change in Cameroon. So as a matter of fact, it's not about Chiroma, it's about change in the country. That's what Cameroonians voted for. If there's some other way to ensure that change comes to that part of the world where there'll be this effort at national reconciliation, where there'll be this effort at a fundamental constitutional change, which Project C is now working on. We're working to talk to Cameroonians across the nation and pool ideas as best we can and propose what should be the constitution of a modern Cameroon. We're working on what should constitute a real vision for that country. And these are the things that we must do if we're going to preserve and make that spot, that place on the map of Africa a better place for everyone.
What is the major problem you are being told is happening in Yaoundé, preventing Biya from appointing the cabinet? Is it the Ambazonia conflict? Is it the constitutional change?
Yeah, I think based on everything I know, Chris, there are a number of. One is at the top of the list is the absence of control. I do not think Mr. Biya is in control. At least nothing close to what he could have been or what he was 10 years ago. I don't think he's in control. That's one. It's very important. The second thing I think is he cannot bring the divided parties in the country, the divided parties at the helm of the country. Unfortunately, there is that division at the top, at the leadership of the country. He cannot bring the various sides together to agree on what is in their common interest. They cannot find that common interest. Based on what I am told, his wife, stands as one pillar in the structure of leadership, and around that pillar and holding it up are the Secretary General of the government of the presidency, Mr. Ngongo, and the Deputy Director of Cabinet, Mr. Baboke. Based on what I know, and I may be wrong, but I think I'm sufficiently informed on these things. So they stand at one end. At the other end, around the other pillar of leadership, there is Louis Paul Mutaze, Laurent Esso, and you can put Frank Biya on that. And then there's a third silent pillar that includes everybody else. The Secretary General of the party, Mr. Kwete, the Prime Minister, there's a third weaker pillar. And somehow you've got to be able to find a way that has these people working together. So right now, their only interest is ensuring that Mr. Biya doesn't die in office, because everything's up for grabs.
Yeah.
The second thing is,
I was going to ask, what about a situation where he dies ever before he's able to appoint a vice president, and then you have all these factions? Who decides what?
The army might. And the army is controlled by some people. Now, which faction of the army will impose itself, God alone knows. That's why we should not wish for the post-Biya system or the post-Biya era to be determined by his ultimate demise. We should hope that these problems will be resolved before he moves on. It's the same reason they cannot even determine who the next vice president should be. Because again, who that vice president is will determine who continues in office.
Right.
And if it is Frank, as everybody seems to be saying, Chantal and the Ngongo faction would be sidelined. So they cannot let it happen. If it is Ferdinand Ngongo, he cannot be. He doesn't have the political weight. If it is, so who can it be right now? It should be an Anglophone. And they'll probably try to find the most submissive of the Anglophones so that they can control him or her. But can they agree on such an individual? I don't think so. So we are in a real bind in that country when it comes to control of the state and the ability to provide governance to the country. So I don't see a solution anywhere.
Let's assume the military takes over. Do you see the military capabilities of organizing a fair and free election where you then have
I don't see that
legitimate leader?
I don't see that happening. Right. That's why we have to hope that that Mr. Biya that the crisis of governance in Cameroon is resolved before Mr. Biya passes on. That is my hope as someone who loves this country and has fought for it for decades now. We have to hope that the crisis is resolved before Mr. Biya leaves office. Otherwise, it'll be chaos come home.
Well, the situation we have there now is like a story that I was told, I learned years ago of this man taken to the hospital, and you know how in those days, I think it still happens today, they take you to the hospital, there are like 20 patients in a single ward, and they admit the man in the hospital, put him at the end corner of the ward, and he got up in the morning, the person at the head of the ward dies. The next day he got up, the next person next to the door died. The third day, the other person, he said, this thing is coming closer to me. This thing is getting closer to me.
You know, Mr. Biya is conscious of that. Mr. Biya is conscious of that, and everybody around him is. I mean, you cannot have a situation where in under 1 month, the president of the National Assembly, the president of the Senate, the head of the Economic and Social Council, the head of the top person in the military, and so on, they just keep going.
Right.
I mean, the guy has to know that every hour counts.
I think Biya is looking at the door every day. When is my turn, right?
Exactly, of course.
Eric, please, a few more minutes, stay put there. When we come back, we'll open the phone lines for a few phone calls, please.
Okay.
Don't be left behind.
AI is changing everything. Are you ready? Learn AI with live instructors, not pre-recorded videos. Become a certified AI engineer. Position yourself for high-paying global opportunities.
Get internationally accredited certification and real career support.
We help you build your resume and connect you to job opportunities. Classes start May 22. Limited seats available. Enroll now at certifiedaiacademy.com or text AI to 346-271-0711.
346-271-0711.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this moment we open the phone lines, have you call in to contribute to the conversation here. We have been discussing the attacks in Muyuka where Ambazonia Restoration Fighters stripped Cameroon soldiers of 8 machine guns yesterday. 8 machine guns, including an RPG. And then we also talked about a similar attack in the Ndunga-Mantung, where 2 La République du Cameroon soldiers fell to Ambazonia Restoration Fighters and their ammunition confiscated from them. And then, of course, the 20th May is 2 days to come. And the message is this is illegal. 20th May is illegal in Ambazonia. It is a day that we were stripped of our freedom. And so I don't know how you beat a child and expect that child not to cry. That is what La République du Cameroon has been trying to get us to do for the past years since 1972 when they took our rights away. And so if you have a question, a contribution, go ahead and call. Let's have the phone number on the screen, please. All right. And we are also talking about why Paul Biya has been unable for 8 months after promising on December the 25th, New Year's Eve, that he was going to form a new government in a few days, a few days to take care of the challenging economic problems in Cameroon. That hasn't happened. It appears that all that Biya is trying to manage today It's not the economy. It's not the insecurity. It isn't the conflict in Ambazonia. He is managing succession. That is what is going on. But even there too, there seem to be problems, as Eric Chinje puts it. There are three factions out there who would want to have control of who becomes Biya's successor. That is, in picking who becomes his vice president, who becomes the president once he is gone. So, Eric, let me bring you back in here. So, if you look at the three factions that you are talking about, is any of these factions consulting with Issa Chiroma? That is, if you know anything about it. Has Issa Chiroma been consulted?
Yeah, I can say very clearly that none of the three factions says. That I can say with a fair amount of certainty. But I believe that there are people within the power structure of the country that are in touch with him. And it's not about negotiating, it's not about, it's about, I guess they're just hedging their bets to be sure that they're on the right side of history when the time comes.
Do you think if Issa Chiroma were to go back today to the country, anything is going to happen to him?
I am afraid that, well, there are three possibilities. One is, of course, he could be arrested, and I think that's the more likely outcome. He'd be arrested because then they have control over him. The second unlikely outcome is that they'll arrange for him to be eliminated. They have many ways of doing that. The third option, and this would be if, depending on which side of the control agenda is in power, has more power at the time he gets back to Cameroon, they may decide to seek to go for dialogue. So again, if I have to put that in an order of possibilities, I think he'd be killed if he goes back to Cameroon right now. There'll be a genuine attempt to kill him and to get rid of him and silence that once and for all. There'll be the second would be to arrest him, which may just spark the flames in Cameroon, and the third would be dialogue. But it again depends on who is in charge. So he looks at it, and I think he doesn't like the options. But maybe his inside sources are working with him on one of those three options, which is why I say Chiroma might be in that country before long.
Before the Pope's visit to Cameroon, it is my understanding that he was seeking the Vatican to step in and negotiate between him and Cameroon. What were his expectations?
Well, the good thing is I've not spoken to Mr. Chiroma now in a few weeks, and maybe I can safely now say, because I think they think I'm not. I tend to speak too much, maybe. But I think at the time, the expectations were that the grounds would be laid for some ultimate return based on what the church knows. Mm-hmm. The church, the Catholic Church especially, had next to the government the most number of people manning the polling booths. The church more than anybody else besides the government. And the church results were very clear. Chiroma won. So they reminded the Pope about this, and I think the hope was that the Pope will help in seeking an arrangement that will allow Mr. Chiroma to return. I think that's what was happening.
Okay. So essentially, Chiroma was trying to pass the message to the Pope. When you get to Cameroon, tell him to step aside, because the consensus is he did not win the elections, and let the rightful winner come over.
I'll let you say that, Chris, and I won't let it come from me. But I believe strongly that there was, based on internal discussions in Cameroon, or with some folks in Cameroon, there was a sense, I believe, that, the Pope could help in laying the groundwork for something of that nature to happen. Something that would allow Chiroma to go home and be in a position to effect the change that the elections called for, and that his victory called for. I think there was some sense of that, and that's why I can say I don't think it's over yet. I still have the sense that he might be in Cameroon before long.
Okay. That will be quite interesting to sit and watch what happens from there. Eric, listen, thank you for coming on again. And in the absence of any callers, we will call it a night here, sir.
Thank you, sir. Always a pleasure.
All right. You have a great night out there.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, in the absence of any calls, we will call it a night right here. I want to thank you for tuning in and being part of the show. I look forward to coming back here on Wednesday. Thanks once more for tuning in, and good night.
Don't be left behind.
AI is changing everything. Are you ready? Learn AI with live instructors, not pre-recorded videos. Become a certified AI engineer. Position yourself for high-paying global opportunities.
Get internationally accredited certification and real career support.
We help you build your resume and connect you to job opportunities. Classes start May 22. Limited seats available. Enroll now at certifiedaiacademy.com or text AI to 346-271-0711.
346-271-0711.
Don't be left behind.
AI is changing everything. Are you ready? Learn AI with live instructors, not pre-recorded videos. Become a certified AI engineer. Position yourself for high-paying global opportunities.
Get internationally accredited certification and real career support.
We help you build your resume and connect you to job opportunities. Classes start May 22. Limited seats available. Enroll now at certifiedaiacademy.com or text AI to 346-271-0711.
346-271-0711.